They say family is supposed to be your sanctuary, a place where you can breathe without fear. But sometimes it's where you learn to hold your breath the longest. Last Thanksgiving, I sat at the crowded table surrounded by 15 relatives, and Shannon, my older sister, leaned over with that venomous smile and whispered loud enough for everyone to hear, "Maybe she's just a little unbalanced." The laughter that followed was sharp and sudden, like a crack in the ice beneath me. I remember feeling my face flush, my heartbeat quicken, a strange mix of humiliation and disbelief. But before the room could drown me, I slipped away, out into the cold night, hands trembling, lungs gasping for calm. That moment wasn't just embarrassment. It was a fracture, a painful reminder that I was invisible in the family I had been silently holding together for years. I've spent most of my 30 years quietly supporting the Sinclair family, the dependable one who fixes what's broken without complaint. I'm Tessa, the nonprofit fundraiser who's more comfortable behind the scenes than in the spotlight. 8 years ago, when the heating system in our old family home gave out in the dead of winter, I paid $5,000 out of my savings to fix it. Nobody said thank you. Not once. Shannon, with her effortless charm and radiant smile, always drew the attention. She's the golden child, my sister by 2 years, favored by mom and dad, with a knack for twisting perceptions. At family dinners recently, I caught whispers, faint but persistent, questioning my mental health, as if Shannon had planted seeds to poison the well of trust. I try to hold on, reminding myself that they haven't seen the whole me yet. After all, the house we all live in, it's mine. Bought with my own money, my secret refuge. But even that quiet strength feels fragile under Shannon's looming shadow. Growing up wasn't a fairy tale for me. I remember one Christmas, when I was 12, and Shannon got a brand new bike, shiny and red with a bell that jingled perfectly. I was handed a worn, used bike with chipped paint and wobbly wheels. Mom said, "Shannon's just more responsible." Those words sank deep, carving out the space where I learned that fairness wasn't in the cards for me. Shannon's achievements were celebrated with applause and gifts. Mine were barely an afterthought. In high school, people praised Shannon for keeping the peace during family fights, but she often twisted stories to her advantage, playing the victim or the hero as it suited her. The worst was when she accused me of stealing money from Dad's wallet. The money was later found in her room, but the damage was done. Parents took her side silently, and I was left isolated, my reputation tarnished by her lies. That moment taught me that Shannon's manipulations could destroy more than just feelings. They could ruin lives. Despite the pain, I've given everything to keep this family afloat. Over 5 years, I've poured more than $150,000 into mortgage payments, medical bills for grandma, and even cousins' tuition. I sacrificed vacations, turning down promotional opportunities at work to stay nearby when the family needed me most. Daniel, my husband, watches quietly, sometimes questioning if my sacrifices are appreciated or just exploited. The other night, he gently said, "Tess, maybe it's time to set some boundaries." I wanted to believe he was right, that recognition was coming, but exhaustion clings to me like a shadow. Meanwhile, Shannon takes credit for managing the family, painting me as unreliable and unstable. What no one knows is that the house we live in is legally mine. It's my secret power, a card I've never played because I fear it would only deepen the divide. Daniel encourages me to consider it, but I cling to hope that patience and love might still heal the wounds. That Thanksgiving dinner, sitting among relatives, feeling their eyes flicker between me and Shannon, was the first time the weight of it all crushed me. When Shannon's words cut through the noise, I wanted to snap back, to defend myself, but I didn't. Instead, I smiled weakly, telling myself she was just stressed, maybe tired. My heart pounded in my chest as I excused myself, stepping out into the cold night air, the scent of wood smoke and pine filling my lungs but unable to calm the storm inside. Daniel followed quietly, offering his hand, his presence a small comfort in the midst of the chaos. I realized then that leaving without a fight was my first act of resistance, a tentative stand for my dignity. But beneath that small victory lay a seed of doubt. Could peace really ever come? Shannon watched from inside, her smirk sharp and satisfied, while I held on to my quiet strength, hoping it would be enough. The moment I showed any sign of standing my ground, Shannon pounced. It was subtle at first, whispers slipping through family gatherings like poison in the wine. She gathered our cousins and aunts quietly, planting seeds with practiced ease. "Tessa's been so sensitive lately," she murmured. "Maybe she's not herself." I caught the sideways glances, the forced smiles that didn't reach their eyes. The flying monkeys activated, a phrase Daniel used once, describing family members who do an abuser's bidding without question. Aunt Margaret subtly warned me at brunch, her voice low and urgent. "Tess, you need to choose your battles wisely. Sometimes it's better to stay quiet." Her words felt like a slap, masked with concern. Even Dad joined the chorus without realizing how sharp his dismissal stung. "You worry too much, Tess," Robert said one evening, his tone gentle but dismissive. His eyes, once warm, now held a tired impatience I hadn't seen before. The gaslighting was relentless. "You've always been dramatic," Shannon's voice echoed in my mind, a soundtrack I couldn't escape. I found myself questioning what was real. Was I really overreacting? Had I become the unstable one? The doubt crept in like cold fog, wrapping itself tighter every day. Then came a message from one of my cousins. "Are you okay? People are talking." The kindness was faint, but the implication was heavy. Isolation settled around me, narrowing my world. Yet Daniel's steady presence was my anchor, his quiet belief in me a flicker of light amid the gathering storm. The battle lines were clear now. Any pushback I tried invited a harsher, more calculated counterattack. When I realized the breeding ground for this venomous tension was still the family I wanted to heal, I sought a peaceful conversation. Over a tentative family brunch, I cornered Shannon quietly, hoping this time honesty might break through. I spoke calmly, steadying my voice as I laid out the facts, my financial sacrifices, the care I'd poured into this family, the emotional exhaustion I felt. I looked her in the eyes, searching for a glimmer of understanding. Instead, her lips trembled with practiced tears. "You're the one who's jealous," she accused, voice thick with false sorrow. "I'm the one caring for Mom and Dad. You just want attention," Margaret chimed in, her voice laced with dismissal. "Maybe Tess is just too sensitive, and this is all a misunderstanding." The cousin Mark, appointed mediator, urged, "Let it go, for the sake of family harmony." I left the table hollow, my attempt to bridge the divide only deepening it. It was as if my words bounced off a wall of stone, my truth dismissed as weakness. But even in defeat, I refused to surrender. My spirit bruised, yes, but not broken. The fallout hit me hard and fast. At the charity gala where I'd volunteered countless hours, Shannon's cruelty took a new form. She circulated a private voicemail I'd recorded during a moment of vulnerability. Tears, frustration spilling out in a raw confession about the family's endless stress. I'd never imagined that private moment becoming public weaponry. The message landed in inboxes of family, colleagues, even donors. I felt their eyes on me that night, curious and judgmental. Whispers followed, doubts cast over my professionalism. Daniel confronted Shannon, his voice sharp with anger. "Why are you doing this?" he demanded. Her reply was icy. "I'm just defending the family." The cold calculation behind her words cut deeper than any accusation. Friends began pulling away, uncertain what to believe. The humiliation was overwhelming, my personal and public life unraveling simultaneously. The damage was tangible, a rupture widening beneath my feet. Shannon's ruthless intent was undeniable, and the isolation loomed larger than ever. Despite the pain twisting in my chest, I reached one last time toward hope. I wrote a letter to Shannon, each word a fragile offering of forgiveness and a plea for honesty. I asked for boundaries, for respect. Simple things I'd yearned for all along. I folded the letter carefully, slipping it under her door with a trembling hand. Days later, her response arrived. Not in the form of reconciliation, but a cruel mockery. Sarcastic, cold, and laced with threats to reveal even worse secrets. It shredded any fragile hope I'd held. She paraded my vulnerabilities in family chats, twisting private moments into weapons. The rejection was brutal, a final sharp fracture. As I read her words, I felt a weight settle. This was no longer about family healing. Daniel found me curled on the couch, tears silent but deep. He held my hand and said quietly, "You did everything you could. Now, you have to protect yourself." The moment was a painful reckoning, the emotional low before a new, fiercer resolve began to stir within me. The silence on the other end of the phone stung sharper than any insult Shannon had thrown my way. Calls once returned promptly now went straight to voicemail or were met with curt, distracted replies. I found myself staring at the screen, finger hovering hesitantly before giving up and lowering the phone. My relatives, once a source of tentative comfort, had retreated behind carefully crafted walls built on Shannon's whispered lies. "Tessa's unstable," they said in hushed tones. "Dangerous," one of my cousins whispered to Daniel, who refused to stop answering my calls, his voice steady with unwavering loyalty. Aunt Margaret, who had always walked a thin line, now sided subtly with Shannon, cautioning, "Sometimes you just have to let things be, Tess. You're causing drama where none should be." Her words felt like daggers disguised as concern, twisting my gut. It was as if every thread I'd woven into this family tapestry was unraveling, leaving me exposed and raw. I sat alone in the dim light of the living room, exhaustion pressing down like a suffocating fog. The weight of rejection settled deep into my bones, dulling every sense. A question curled like smoke around my mind. Maybe I really was the problem. The thought was a poison I couldn't spit out, a relentless echo that pounded louder with every unanswered call and cold glance. I fought to breathe through the heaviness, my chest tight, heart aching with the ache of invisibility. Yet somewhere beneath that crushing self-doubt, a faint ember flickered stubbornly, a quiet, simmering resolve I barely recognized. Survival, I realized, meant more than enduring their judgments. It meant shielding myself from the pain, even if it meant standing alone in a family fractured beyond repair. No matter how much it hurt, I had to accept this was no longer about acceptance or warmth. It was about truth, about fairness, and about reclaiming my dignity from the shadows Shannon tried so desperately to cast. The days blurred into a haze of awkward encounters and pointed silences. At family events, I became a ghost, watched but unseen, spoken about, but never directly engaged. Daniel's presence was the only constant, his calm voice a balm when I faltered. "They're scared of you," he said once, his eyes fierce with quiet conviction. "Because you won't break." I wanted to believe him as I sat curled beneath layers of blankets, shivering against the cold that wasn't just in the air. Even in silence, Shannon's poison spread, cutting deeper than any argument, seeping into the bones of the family I once thought home. The fracture was undeniable now, wide and jagged. My hope for peace, for recognition, was fading fast, replaced by a hunger I hadn't allowed myself before. A hunger for truth, for justice, for a chance to set things right in a world that had turned its back on me. I clung to Daniel's hand that night, the only anchor in a swirling storm of doubt and despair. "I'm not losing myself," I whispered, voice raw but steady. "Not completely." His nod was a silent promise, and as I closed my eyes, I felt the ember within me spark to life. If the family would no longer hold me, I would hold myself. If they refused to see the truth, I would find a way to make it impossible to ignore. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I felt the faintest stirrings of something fierce and unyielding. I was more than their whispers and rumors. I was still me, and I was still here. The betrayal hit harder than I could have imagined, shattering the fragile remnants of trust I'd clung to. At the annual family reunion, an event once filled with hesitant warmth, I was blindsided by a revelation that felt like a punch to the gut. Shannon had secretly sold the family home, the very house registered in my name, without so much as a whisper. The buyers were close friends of hers, their faces familiar yet sinister in the betrayal they represented. $350,000 vanished into accounts I could only guess at. Margaret stood beside her, tears streaming down her face as she announced to the stunned crowd, "This is all Tessa's doing. She's trying to control everything." The absurdity stung, the cruel lie twisting inside me as I tried to speak, to defend, but my voice caught in my throat. Daniel's hand found mine, his grip steady, a lifeline in the chaos. I saw the shock ripple through the cousins, the disbelief in their eyes as they looked between Shannon and me. The house was not just a building. It was my security, my sanctuary, the culmination of years of sacrifice. And now it was being taken away, sold out from under me, under the guise of control and manipulation. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was legal, financial, and irrevocable. The weight of it pressed on my chest, suffocating and cold. But beneath the shock, a terrifying clarity emerged. The veil lifted, and I saw Shannon for what she truly was, a calculated force determined to erase me from the family's fabric, to rewrite the story for her own gain. The hope I'd held for peace, for understanding, died in that moment. In its place rose something colder, sharper, a resolve tempered not by passion but by precision. My posture straightened, my eyes hardening with a steel I barely recognized as my own. This was the end of silence, the end of passivity. Daniel's squeeze was quiet, but spoke volumes. His support unwavering, a shield against the storm. I met Margaret's tearful gaze without flinching, the bitter taste of betrayal burning in my mouth. There was no going back to the woman who accepted quiet suffering, the one who endured without resistance. Something inside me snapped, a breaking point that fractured the old me and birthed a new one. This was no longer about family harmony or fragile peace. It was about survival, justice, and reclaiming what was mine, whatever it took. The fight was beginning, and I was ready. That night, alone in the silence of my room, I sifted through memories like discarded pages from a book I once believed in. Years of sacrifice weighed heavily, each selfless act shadowed by Shannon's relentless cruelty. The whispered accusations, the rumors branding me crazy, the invisibility in the family's eyes, it all coalesced into a sharp pulse of pain beneath my skin. Tears came unbidden, hot and cleansing, but they were followed by something stronger, anger. Not the wild, reckless fury I'd feared, but a steady, simmering heat that sharpened my focus. This wasn't just sadness anymore. It was the fire of realization. This has always been this way, I told myself, voice barely above a whisper. I just didn't want to see it. The betrayal was no longer a vague ache, but a solid truth I could no longer deny. The isolation, the humiliation, it forged something new inside me. I thought of the house, my house, the silent testament to every sacrifice I'd made. It wasn't just a place to live. It was leverage, power I'd kept hidden out of hope for peace. Now I understood that quiet strength was the foundation of my fight. The tears stung but didn't weaken me. They were the closing of one chapter and the opening of another. I whispered into the dark, "Never again." The words felt like a promise etched deep into my bones. The grief was real, but it no longer ruled me. I was no longer the victim of a family's lies. I was something different, focused, fierce, and unbreakable. In the soft morning light, Daniel and I sat across from each other at our small kitchen table, cups of coffee steaming between us. My voice was steady, the resolve clear. "It's time to stop being the victim," I said, the words tasting like both relief and steel. He nodded, eyes warm but cautious. "I'm with you, every step," he promised, reaching across to clasp my hand. Together, we began to map a path forward, not one of anger, but of strategy. Shannon was the target, but I knew the web of complicity ran deeper through the family. We needed proof, undeniable evidence to pull back the curtain on her lies. I told Daniel about the documents I'd secretly stored, bank statements, voicemails, messages that painted a different story than the one Shannon spun so deftly. We agreed the stage for exposure would be Thanksgiving dinner, when the family would be gathered, their attention captive. The plan was careful, deliberate. No rash confrontations, just facts laid bare. As I organized the files, the weight of doubt lifted, replaced by a sharp clarity. This was no longer about healing old wounds or seeking approval. It was about reclaiming control, wielding truth as a weapon. I caught my reflection in the window, eyes clearer, posture unyielding. The woman who waited silently was gone. In her place stood someone ready to fight, to expose, and to never again be silenced. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, I felt the power of purpose steadying my every breath. I would no longer wait for others to see my truth. I was going to make them see it. I sat at the kitchen table, a growing mountain of bills and statements spread before me, each one a grim reminder of what I'd been carrying alone. The mortgage, still under my name, felt heavier than ever. I traced my fingers over the documents, counting how many times I'd covered expenses, unpaid utilities, medical bills for Dad's checkups, repairs Shannon conveniently forgot to pay. Not to mention the emotional labor, the calls I made to calm Mom during her panic attacks, the nights I stayed up to listen to Shannon's frantic cries for attention, all while they painted me as the unstable one. I pulled out my phone and played the voicemails again, 89 in total, each a different shade of Shannon's unraveling. There were rants full of venom, pleas sharpened with desperation, and threats so raw that my skin crawled. In one, she begged, "You don't get to erase me, Tess. I'm family." The irony hit me hard. Later, I met with Rachel Bennett, the family lawyer who barely hid her sympathy for my plight. She flipped through the documents I'd compiled, nodding grimly. "You hold the legal keys to that house," she said quietly. "No one can sell it without your consent. And there's evidence of deception in those transactions." Her words felt like a lifeline. We strategized quietly. How to leverage ownership. How to expose the fraudulent sale without playing into Shannon's narrative. Rachel emphasized documentation. Every voicemail, every unpaid bill, every manipulated signature is a thread we can pull. I made notes, each revelation etched into my memory. For the first time, the power imbalance felt less hopeless. They needed me far more than I needed them. The secret power I'd discovered months ago wasn't just a secret anymore. It was a weapon forged in truth, ready to be wielded. Back home, I carefully organized everything, labeling folders and backing up voicemails onto encrypted drives. Each message from Shannon was more damning than the last, her voice sometimes trembling, sometimes cold and calculating. "You think you're the victim?" she sneered in one. "I'm the only one keeping this family together." But the truth in her tone betrayed her. Fear, desperation, and the unraveling of the carefully built mask. I realized the pressure points: financial deception, emotional blackmail, and the illegal sale of the family home were all connected in a web meant to trap me. As I documented them, I felt a strange calm settle over me, the storm inside beginning to focus into a clear plan. They had underestimated me, and now the balance was shifting. For the first time in months, a flicker of hope pierced the darkness. That night, I sat in the soft glow of the desk lamp, reading through transcripts of Shannon's messages one last time. Each word felt like a confession, a crack in her armor. I whispered into the silence, "You need me more than I need you." The phrase echoed, a mantra to steady my resolve. I wasn't just fighting to reclaim a house or prove a point. I was fighting for my dignity, my sanity, the truth buried beneath years of lies. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming what was rightfully mine, and I was ready to take back control, one carefully documented step at a time. The next morning, I woke with a steady heartbeat, the weight of uncertainty replaced by a quiet determination. I wasn't alone. Rachel and Daniel stood with me, their support a shield. The battle was only beginning, but at last, I had a map, a clear path through the chaos Shannon had created. I folded the papers carefully, ready to move forward. They thought they could break me, but all they did was ignite the fire I needed to fight back. In the days that followed, I moved silently, but deliberately. Passwords on shared accounts, banking, utilities, even the streaming services Shannon used to claim family control were changed under my careful watch. I secured all legal documents in a safe deposit box, the keys tucked away where no one but me could find them. My will was updated, a quiet reflection of my guard against future betrayals. I backed up every voicemail, email, and message on encrypted drives, the weight of proof becoming a shield around me. To the outside world, everything remained calm. I wore my usual smile at family dinners, kept my tone light and casual in passing conversations. No one suspected the storm gathering beneath my composed exterior. Daniel noticed the shift. His brow furrowed once as we sat on the couch after a long day. "You're like a time bomb, Tess," he said quietly, eyes searching mine, calm on the surface, but ticking. I gave a small, tight smile, unwilling to reveal the full scope of my preparations. "Sometimes that's the best place to be," I replied, voice steady. The quiet before the storm was a strange kind of peace. I found solace in small rituals, brewing tea just right, sitting by the window watching the rain, letting the moments slip by like a slow tide washing away the noise. At a family brunch, Shannon was her usual self, bragging loudly about her control over Mom and Dad's affairs, her voice dripping with smug satisfaction. She had no idea the foundation beneath her feet was cracking. As she laughed, oblivious, I caught Margaret's wary glance, a hint of unease flashing before she looked away. The tension was thick but invisible, a silent current pulling everything toward an inevitable reckoning. For now, I held my tongue, my patience like steel wire coiled tight. The Thanksgiving confrontation was rehearsed endlessly in my mind, each word and glance planned with precise intention. My silence wasn't surrender. It was control. I was waiting for the perfect moment to strike. One evening, while sorting through old photo albums to find a picture for the family wall, Emily, our younger cousin, approached me hesitantly. Her eyes were wide, her voice barely a whisper. "Tess, I found something. You need to see this." She handed me a sealed envelope, the paper thick and worn, as if it had been hidden away for years. Inside were bank statements and letters that shook me to my core. They revealed that Mom had quietly diverted $200,000 from our late grandfather's inheritance into Shannon's separate account, without telling me or anyone else. The betrayal was staggering. Emily confessed, her voice trembling. "I couldn't stand watching Shannon take everything. Mom's been enabling her all along." The room seemed to tilt as I absorbed the weight of this revelation. Not only had Shannon been manipulating the family, but Mom was complicit, hiding the truth behind tears and smiles. This wasn't just sibling rivalry or jealousy. It was a calculated conspiracy to erase me. Daniel sat with me long into the night as we pored over the documents, tracing every transaction, every forged signature, every lie. The picture was clear now. A web of deceit spanning years, implicating both Shannon and Mom in a scheme to strip me of my inheritance and dignity. My hands shook with a mix of anger and disbelief. "This changes everything," I whispered, the fire inside me growing fiercer. For the first time, I felt the full force of an unexpected ally in Emily, her quiet courage a tremor of hope. Together, we connected the dots, understanding that the exposure planned for Thanksgiving would now unveil the entire family's betrayal, not just Shannon's. The urgency tightened around me like a vice. This wasn't just about reclaiming what was mine. It was about exposing the rot at the heart of our family. I felt a surge of clarity. This truth was my weapon, sharper than any anger. The plan shifted, growing more precise, more urgent. I was no longer fighting alone. I was fighting for justice against a legacy of lies. The morning after receiving Emily's envelope, I began making the first moves toward reclaiming control. I stopped paying the utility bills tied to the house, watching quietly as overdue notices began to pile up. Vendors familiar with Shannon's voice called me, confused and frustrated by the missed payments. I refused to co-sign a loan Shannon had desperately requested, watching her frustration simmer beneath her practiced charm. I informed Rachel to prepare formal notices regarding the fraudulent sale of the house, her voice calm as she assured me the legal groundwork was solid. The family sensed something shifting, whispers growing in the background, but no one could yet trace the source. Shannon's confidence began to crack. She confronted Mom privately, her voice low but sharp, demanding answers I knew Mom couldn't give. I stayed composed at family events, attending with polite smiles and measured politeness, my facade unbroken. Daniel watched me closely, his voice a quiet admiration. "You're unstoppable now, Tess. This is a different you." I blocked Shannon's increasingly frantic attempts to contact me. Her calls and messages met with silence or firm refusals. Each subtle move was a strike, eroding her control piece by piece. The power dynamics were shifting beneath the surface, the first tremors of a reckoning that no one yet dared to face. As I sat alone that night, the quiet buzz of the house around me, I felt the weight of what I'd begun. My hands rested on the table, steady and sure. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was orchestrating. The first phase of my plan was unfolding exactly as intended. Shannon's grip was loosening, and with each step, the balance of power edged closer to tipping. The battlefield had been set, and I was ready for the fight ahead. No longer silent, no longer unseen. I was reclaiming my story, one calculated move at a time. The room buzzed with the low hum of chatter, laughter, and clinking glasses as 20 of us gathered around the long table, the scent of roasted turkey and cinnamon filling the air. I sat steady, my hands folded neatly on my lap, waiting for the moment I'd rehearsed until exhaustion. When the conversation lulled, I stood slowly, a quiet calm settling over me. "I have something important to share," I said, voice clear but gentle enough to hold the room. Eyes turned toward me, some curious, others wary. The familiar warmth of family was now charged with tension, like a storm about to break. I reached into my purse and pulled out a thick envelope, the inheritance documents Emily had given me. Holding them up, I said, "This house, the one we've all called home, is legally mine. The mortgage, the financial support, everything stopped because of decisions made behind my back." I could feel the weight of their disbelief. Then, I pressed play on my phone. The first voicemail erupted. Shannon's voice, frantic and angry, screaming accusations that made my skin crawl. One by one, the messages spilled out. Desperate pleas, venomous threats, her voice shattering between rage and despair. The room fell silent, the only sound the crackle of the speaker. Margaret gasped, rising as if to intervene, but I held up a hand in the envelope again. "And here," I said firmly, "is proof of $200,000 secretly diverted from grandfather's inheritance into Shannon's account." Faces turned pale. Shannon's poised facade faltered. Her voice wavered as she tried to explain, but stammered and fell silent. Daniel stood beside me, his quiet presence a steady anchor. Throughout the room, glances flickered. Shock, embarrassment, silent support. Some shifted uncomfortably. Others exchanged knowing looks. I took a breath and said, "This family deserves the truth. No more lies." The power had shifted. The golden child was no longer untouchable. And for the first time, I saw the real cracks in her armor. The reckoning had arrived. Days later, the fallout was impossible to ignore. Shannon's confident world unraveled like a thread pulled too hard. Vendors called, their voices clipped and impatient about unpaid bills she couldn't cover without the house's income. The social circles that once lauded her whispered behind closed doors. Margaret, once a silent accomplice, faced a storm of guilt and shocked relatives questioning her complicity. I watched my phone light up, texts and calls from Shannon, each more desperate than the last. "Tess, please, we can fix this," she begged. Her messages flooded the family group chats, dripping with false apologies and frantic promises, but I didn't respond. My boundaries were clear. Only my lawyer would hear her. Behind the scenes, I sensed a subtle shift. Family members who had blindly believed Shannon's stories began seeking answers, their voices softer, tinged with regret. Daniel caught my eye one evening and said quietly, "They're waking up." The isolation around Shannon thickened, her carefully crafted control slipping away like sand through her fingers. Financial chaos compounded emotional unraveling, and I stood firm, a silent observer of justice unfolding. I didn't gloat. I simply knew the truth was breaking the chains that had bound me. Watching the crumbling of a lifetime of lies felt bittersweet, but I was steady, grounded. This was the price of years of deceit finally paid in full. Shannon didn't give up easily. When silence failed, she escalated. There were threats of legal battles to reclaim the house, accusations of harassment against me, and a flood of victimhood staged publicly on social media. I watched as she enlisted distant relatives and old family friends, trying to rally a last defense of flying monkeys to pressure me. She wove stories of childhood trauma, painting me as unstable and cruel, using false memories like weapons. But I was prepared. I'd consulted with Rachel thoroughly, and every claim was a misstep. None of her tactics worked. Some family members who once sided with her reached out with quiet apologies, embarrassed by their earlier blindness. Shannon's threats fizzled like sparks falling in the rain. Her isolation deepened, the golden child now a shadow, defeated not by anger, but by the unwavering truth I held. I refused to take her bait, maintaining my dignity and composure. The final chapter of her manipulation closed with a heavy silence, a quiet surrender. It was strange, victory without celebration, a calm acceptance that the fight was over. I was no longer part of her twisted narrative. I stood on higher ground, morally and practically. The truth was my armor, and I wore it without bitterness, only a quiet resolve. The family could rebuild or crumble, but I was free. 6 months later, the air around me felt lighter, the chaos replaced by a hard-earned peace. The house remained legally mine, now managed openly with Rachel's oversight. Shannon's attempts to contact me ceased entirely, and Margaret, cautious but respectful, slowly rebuilt a distant relationship. I set clear boundaries. Family gatherings were smaller now, quieter, and respect was non-negotiable. Sitting with Daniel in our sunlit kitchen, I reflected, I don't miss the chaos. Peace is worth more than approval. He smiled, his hand warm around mine, the strongest ally I could imagine. Emily's unexpected support had healed some wounds, a reminder that truth can shift even the deepest loyalties. The family might be fractured, but I was whole. The scars remained, reminders of battles fought in silence and shadows, but they no longer defined me. I was empowered by truth and self-respect, free from manipulation's grip. Thanksgiving dinners were smaller, quieter, but for the first time, filled with honesty. I smiled softly, the weight of years lifting. I was ready for a future defined on my own terms, stronger, steady, and unafraid. The past didn't vanish, but it no longer controlled me. This was my story, reclaimed and lived with quiet dignity and hope.